So what is Zfest, you might be asking yourself right now? Well, it's a pretty solid little video game from Diagrammet AB off in Sweden. They've only made one small game before this, so as their second entry into the world of video games, how does Zfest stand up? Zfest is an up to 4-person arena shooter that's a little bit ridiculous, but ends up being a pretty fun package, with room for potential to grow over its early access and what it currently offers with 5 maps, 5 characters, and a good dozen weapons. With a bit of elbow grease, Zfest could easily become a really solid video game. Today we're going to put Zfest through the paces. We'll look at the gameplay in co-op and solo, we'll look at the sound design, the current progression system, and then where things are planned to go, and what I think would be nice to see along the way through the game's early access. Oh, and also there's memes. Do it! Gameplay wise, this game's pretty fun. It kind of reminds me of like an old arcade game where it's easy to get into and pretty simple. The missions in the game are also pretty easy to figure out, except this one math mission. They're all pretty easy to get into and figure out. Defend a target, fix a blender to blend up enemies, that sort of thing. As for the Zeds, I guess they're aliens or something. I'm not entirely too sure what they are. But there's also these Rocket Doom guys and dudes with tentacle arms. Really, the game doesn't make it apparent why you're fighting these dudes. You just kinda gotta do it. Do it! With a couple different types of bosses to fight along the way, it's already a pretty spicy experience for solo play. And outside of what you're fighting, this game actually offers quite a bit in terms of progression for how you fight those things. With unlockable weapons, skins, perks, and emotes, there's quite a bit to grind for. The only downside, I would say, is that the grind can be pretty intense when you're in single player. But on that note, multiplayer actually really works in this game. It's just a ton of fun when you're playing with your friends because of all the kind of goofy things that are all happening at once when you're playing this game. So a lot of times in multiplayer sessions, you can find yourself going through multiple sets and earning a ton of money along the way. So multiplayer is definitely the way that Zfest currently shines. Now that's not to say that there isn't a single player experience here in Zfest, it's just that throughout the early access, one of the big things that I hope to see is a better crafted single player experience here in the game. Whether or not it's a short campaign or some missions that are kind of a little bit more structured than the current freeform system, just something like that would be awesome to see coinciding with what is currently in the game. It doesn't have to have a ton of lore or anything like that, but just something a little bit more structured to give the single player experience a bit of backbone. Now, the sound design in this game is actually pretty alright, even though the guns sound pretty stock and sometimes things don't have as much oomph as they possibly could have. The real shining gem in this game is the soundtrack. It's all this metal stuff, and it's sick, and it like really totally matches the atmosphere of this game.
Show us some sporting blood.
Visually, the game looks alright, you know, especially when it comes to the world design and the kind of Borderlands kind of style that you get with the characters with the kind of heavy cartoon outline. The only downside to the visuals that I would say is the Zeds themselves, the initial alien dudes. There tends to be quite a bit more variety as you get up in the waves, but in the initial onset, all you're fighting are these alien dudes, and that potentially could have a little bit of variety spliced into it, again, as early access goes on. Now, that is kind of the thing to highlight here. Zfest in itself is a early access game, so at its current state, it is just kind of the initial state of the game, and there is a lot of development that's going to be going on that will be improving the game as it goes along. And I actually happen to be privy to a little bit of what is planned for the future. Now, all of this is subject to change, of course, but I think that some of this is pretty interesting for the future of Zfest. Some of the things that are planned for the future are a larger variety of enemies, bosses, and objectives, which exactly answers the thing that I just recently said. More weapons and stuff to use in the game, additional levels. There's a plan for around 10, so 2 times the amount that we're seeing at the launch of Early Access here. More advanced class and gear progression as the game goes along, more optimizations and TLC updates, Steam achievements, full controller support, and then a little bit of love for certain particular classes. And I think that that's awesome. It's always great to see a early access game kind of hit the road running with a solid game plan in mind for what they're going to be doing with their game in the future in order to make the early access worthwhile to the paying customers. And speaking of paying, you're only going to be paying about $15 when the game launches. That's like 12 euros, something like that. All in all, I would give Zfest a 7 out of 10 in single player and an 8 out of 10 in multiplayer, because in co-op you just get so many more shenanigans that make the game a lot more enjoyable. Now, some things that I think would be great to see in Zfest, and I'm gonna kind of just pitch them out here, are first person. I would love to see first person support in this game. That would be great to see, and I think would really add to the experience. And it would also be really nice to see cosmetic items with various boosts attached to them, so that unlocking them feels a little bit more rewarding. It also would add an extra level to character customization. But then outside of that, I think that the outlined plan from the team off at Diagram It already is a great plan so far, and there really isn't too much more that I could ask for, and I really hope that they just kind of stick to their guns and stick to the plan that they have set ahead of them. Zfest is set to launch on the 16th, so just 1 week from now. And I want to know, are you interested in picking up Zfest? Is this your first time hearing about Zfest? Let me know in the comments down below. But for now, thank you so much for watching my review. Hopefully it taught you something about the game, and I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, peace.
I like to have it there. It's pretty warm.
Oh, dude, keeping that shotgun toasty in the cheeks, man.
Oh,
I made a screenshot of that.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
We just vibing.
Yo,
What do you mean?
We just staying clean, yeah?
Wait, can't place multiple in each other?
You can actually go.
Oh. Okay, Leon. All right.
I guess I'll.
Wait a
Hey,
Yeah.
what? Oh, dude.